All right, baseball fans, it is the road to release Out of the Park 27. And you see him right here with us. It's Will Beh, Senior Developer with OOTP. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
My pleasure.
Well, I think one of the things that people love about Out of the Park through the years is the evolution of the interface and what that experience is like year after year. And it's come such a long way. And I know it's a data-driven game, and you're trying to make it pop as much as possible, make it look
Yeah.
engaging and fun. But at the same time, you've got to make it friendly for the user to be able to navigate this information. Can you give us an idea of what 27 is going to look like this year compared to years past?
Yeah, it's obviously not the most flashy thing, but making all there's a lot of changes we made this year that are intended to make the game a lot more easy to interact with and make a lot more sense and look better in some cases, but also in some cases just, feel better to use. And yeah, like it's not something that is like super flashy, but I think it's pretty important for just the general health of the game that we keep iterating on these things. And I think this year was the first year that we really put a focus on a lot of these aspects. So we took care of a lot of different things that people had been talking about in the community for a long time, or things that we identified that we need to kind of revamp. So I guess I could start, like, the first one I think a lot of people noticed was the team schedule. So that used to be like an old HTML page. It was really ugly, and we took the step of redoing that, making it more modern, look a lot better. We also made some changes to something like the player search screen. So we cleaned it up a bit so it's easier to use, makes more sense. And then we made it more usable. Like, the list that you get of players is now a list that you can filter and sort and everything like that. Then we also made changes to something that I know fans have been asking for a long time, which was the shop player. It used to be just this long list of guys that you would have to scroll through. It would be pretty hard to navigate. Now you can sort by overall, you can sort by potential, you can even sort by the contract, or you can sort by their age and position. Like, there's changes like that which essentially make interacting with the game feel a lot better, and those are important to include. And so I think one other thing that we changed is for, like, higher resolution screens. We improved the scaling for that on a lot of pages, so that would look better for, like, the 4K monitors, for example. And then one big thing that I think a lot of people notice is that we rearranged the player profile screen. So now you can see all these percentile rankings, and we just cleaned it up, made it look a lot nicer. And also, really quickly, we also improved, like, the player pop-up. When you hover over a guy in like a list, we made the pop-up look a lot nicer. And so there's a lot of just little details and some relatively large changes to pages and screens that should make it feel a lot better to play the game out.
And it feels like you're kind of, you're trying to please different kinds of crowds, right? You're trying to make this look as aesthetically pleasing as possible, but also for us kind of, for lack of a better word, a baseball geek, we want to cram as much information here as possible, but without being overwhelmed. How did you strike that balance between the two, packing as much into a screen as possible, but without inundating us with so much that we feel like we're basically drinking from a fire hose?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, that's always the difficulty with doing all these changes, is that, you want to put as much there for people to see, but at the same time, you don't want to put too much. And, like, that is something that we actually have to be really cognizant of when we do these changes, where we have to just put the most important things that we can think of, and we have to arrange it in a way that, everything that you need at a first glance is there, but it also exists somewhere else. But also, we didn't want to go through the game and just change a bunch of stuff for the sake of changing stuff, so that people who are used to the game are going to be all, like, backwards when they're trying to play it this year. We really try to focus on things that we knew needed to be updated and revamped. And the goal was that if you are used to playing the game and you've played it for a long time, it will be the exact same but better, if that makes sense. No,
That's kind of what I feel is like overall, that's
yeah,
the feeling I get is as somebody who's been playing the game for 20 something years now that there's a familiarity to this, but also kind of like let me put it this way. It's like you come to a ballpark, you know this ballpark year after year, and they add just
yeah.
these subtle nuances and upgrades. You're like, oh, that's new,
Like
but I still feel like I'm
they
home.
add like cushions to the seats or something nice, you know.
And did you get? Let me ask you when you started putting together this interface and with all due respect, you said it's not that flashy. To me, it pops. I really do. I think you're underselling this. That really is flashy to me.
You know, the stuff on the side here with the next opponent and everything. I mean, that came from our amazing like graphics designer who we work with, Daniel. His idea is like we reach out a lot to us. I'm not a professional artist, so we we reach out to the professional artists on our team for all these inspirations. And then I was like, okay, boss, I'll code that up for you, that kind of thing. I mean, I think there's probably some screens I forgot to mention that we worked on. Like I think the leaderboards screens as well. And I mean, I'm sure there's more than I'm forgetting, but when you play the game, it should be like, oh, that's nice. Like I really like that. And yeah, I suppose like maybe I'm underselling it a little bit because it was a big project. You know, identifying. I mean, I guess the tricky part was we wanted to first work on screens that A were used a lot and B could really use an update. So there's some screens that could really use an update, but people don't really use it all. And there's screens that people use a lot that are like kind of need an update, but not a ton. And so it was kind of like you got to figure out the where that curve, you know, where it peaks, where those are the screens that you really want to focus on. And so I think it might be an ongoing project in over years, but this is like really big first step in going, I think, in the right direction, just for the health of the game in general.
All right. Well, Will, we've been touching these bases as far as the presentation of the game itself, how it's going to look visually for 27, especially for the folks who have been playing previous versions. Let's go under the hood a little bit. Can we talk about what's working behind the scenes specifically as you can tailor your the difficulty ratings in
Yeah.
OOTP 27? What's new? What can people expect this year?
So just to start off, I think there's four difficulty levels right now. So we have minors, majors, all-star, and Hall of Fame. So minors is going to be easier than usual. Majors is the exact same. So if you don't really want to mess with this, you know, there's going to be literally no change. And then you can choose two more difficult modes to play on. So there's a couple there's two main aspects to the difficulty. The first one being like the talent change randomness skew. There's a very slight, if you're playing on like a hard difficulty, there's a very slight skew in favor of AI. And so what this will mean is that over the course of like 10 years or whatever, AI might develop one more major league guy. And of course, as we all know, like baseball is a game of inches. It's really the margins are razor thin, and so a team having one more major league ready guy will just make the whole environment a little bit more difficult in general. But again, it's very minor. It's a very like the intent of the difficulty is that you don't actually notice that it's more difficult, but in the end, you notice that, oh, like I can't crush every season with like 120 wins or something like that. And then the other aspect to it is that, and this is probably the bigger aspect, and that was a lot more work, is that it's been really integrated with existing player attributes that are in the game. So already in the game, players and coaches have these attributes like loyalty to your team, desire for winners, morale, etc. And these difficulties integrate with that so that these existing attributes are amplified to make the game harder. So players will be less loyal to human teams, or they'll be less patient with human teams, or basically they'll see human teams as less desirable places to play as. And while that's like, okay, great, what does that mean? Well, it has a couple of knock-on effects because these attributes already affected things like how much money free agents will demand to go play for you. It'll affect how much signing bonuses draft picks will want. It'll affect how well your team ends up playing because of the morale. Like the difficulty ties in with that in such a way that you'll have to offer a free agent maybe like 10% more to play for your team or something like that. And over time, this all these little bits will add up. And so again, it won't be a noticeable change. Like when you play regularly, you won't notice it, but it'll add up over time. And the idea is that this will really counter for a veteran player. You can really snowball every little micromanagement of like players or cash or whatever. You can really snowball that into taking literally any team and making them into like a 100 plus perennial all like postseason team. And so this will ideally just kind of dampen that snowball effect. Whereas a super veteran player, if they're playing on the hardest difficulty, will realize, oh, like I have to maybe rebuild a little more than I would usually, or I'll have to go through the regular process again. And then kind of the opposite's true. So with the minors difficulty, it's a bit easier. So when you get like a newer player who's coming into the game, they don't have to do all this micromanagement and really be super careful. They'll have a much easier time getting into it, getting a successful team, and having a good time.
Wow. I've heard the phrase "death by 1,000 cuts," right? And it's like when you crank up that AI, you're like, okay, I don't know where these cuts are coming from, but holy cow, you got to stay on top of the ball because getting those 120 wins in a season and winning 5 titles in a row, like those days may be over in OOTP 27.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think also on and this is more of a minor aspect of it, but on like the Hall of Fame difficulty, you can set limits now for yourself for major league signings and like I think trades that you make every season. And this is not really like super impactful because you can set this to whatever you want, but just kind of helps people who have these house rules enforce them a little bit easier.
Well, I was thinking exactly that. I've played the game in the past where, once you kind of figure things out, I'm talking not just, I'm talking well before last year, you'd create these house rules to kind of keep yourself in check and keep it more challenging. And now you can essentially cook those house rules into the game, and the game's going to keep you honest. It's not just something you're going to keep on a notepad.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be like, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to sign that. And yeah, it'll help you out there.
All right. Will, thanks for helping us out. We cannot wait. The user experience hitting an all-time high as we get ready for OOTP 27. This is the road to release. And don't forget, you can pre-order right now. Save yourself 10% off the retail price. And as an added bonus, you get access to the final beta version 3 days ahead of release day, which is coming up March 13th.